From mandatory meditation at 7 a.m. to being forced to notarize a relative's obituary, my corporate job became a masterclass in psychological torture. The final straw that made me walk out and never look back.
My name is Marcus Thorne, and for 3 years, 7 months, and 14 days, I was a senior project coordinator at Sterling Dynamics, a prestigious consulting firm whose glass and steel headquarters in downtown Chicago gleamed with predatory ambition. The company's motto, etched into the marble of the lobby, read, "Excellence through relentless pursuit." What they didn't carve into the stone was the subtext of your sanity, dignity, and will to live. I took the job fresh out of my master's program in organizational psychology. The recruiter, a man named Brett with teeth so white they looked radioactive, sold me a vision. We're not a company, Marcus. We're a family, a high-performing, driven family. We work hard, but we play harder. The growth trajectory here is vertical. He gestured upward with his manicured hand as if pointing to a corporate heaven. The salary was 30% more than any other offer. The benefits package was a novella of promises. I signed, feeling like I'd cracked the code to adult success. The first horror story wasn't a dramatic event. It was a slow, chilling realization, the water going from warm to boiling so gradually you don't notice you're being cooked. It began with the flex time policy. On paper, we had flexible hours to promote work-life harmony. In practice, it meant you were expected to be available from 7 a.m. to 9 p.m. Monday through Saturday. Your flex was choosing which 12-hour block within that time frame you'd be chained to your desk. I learned this when my direct supervisor, Linda, sent me a Slack message at 8:45 p.m. on a Tuesday. Saw you logged off at 7:30. The Perkins account needs a deck by 8 a.m. In the future, please flex your time to meet team needs. I'd been in the office since 7 a.m. I hadn't eaten dinner. I was flexing myself into a pretzel. Then came the Wellness Wednesday farce. To combat burnout, HR mandated a weekly 30-minute wellness break. Sounds humane, right? The catch, it was a mandatory group meditation session led by the CEO's mindfulness coach at 7:15 a.m. If you missed it, you had to submit a 500-word reflection on your commitment to holistic success. I wrote one titled The Cognitive Dissonance of Mandatory Mindfulness after my third absence. Linda called me in for a chat about attitude. But the true foundation of the horror was the culture of performative busyness. Actual productivity was secondary to the appearance of desperate, all-consuming effort. We used a time-tracking software that took screenshots of our monitors every 9 minutes. We had to tag each screenshot with a project code. If you had too many screenshots tagged admin or, God forbid, break, you'd get a gently worded email from Productivity Analytics asking you to recalibrate your focus. People started leaving spreadsheets or dense reports on a second monitor at all times, a digital shield. We were all performing a play called The Most Important Work in the World for an audience of algorithms and middle managers. My colleagues were fellow prisoners, each developing their own coping mechanisms. There was Chloe from Analytics who kept a sleeping bag under her desk for power naps during late-night crunches. Ben from Compliance developed a nervous cough that acted up whenever Linda entered the room. And then there was Anya, the brilliant, cynical graphic designer who sat across from me. She was the office Cassandra, whispering truths no one wanted to hear. "They don't pay us for our labor, Marcus," she muttered once as we both filled out pointless time logs at 8 p.m. "They pay us for our obedience, and they're underpaying." I stayed because of the golden handcuffs, the student loan payments, the Chicago rent, the psychological sunk cost of having endured it for this long, and because they'd mastered the art of dangling just enough carrot to keep you running. A promised promotion, Q4 for sure. A vague hint of a bonus if the team hits its stretch goals. A quarterly pizza party presented as a profound reward for our sacrifice.
The breaking point, the series of horrors that finally made me walk, began with what should have been a triumph. I'd single-handedly salvaged the crumbling Atlas project, a major account that had been mismanaged into the ground. I'd worked 90-hour weeks for 2 months, playing therapist to the furious client, redoing months of botched work, and somehow pulling a win from the jaws of a lawsuit. The client sent a glowing email to the CEO, CCing the entire senior leadership team. I was summoned to Linda's office. Finally, I thought, recognition, a promotion, a thank you. She smiled her thin, lipsticked smile. Marcus, the Atlas feedback was acceptable. My heart sank. Acceptable? However, she continued, spinning her monitor toward me, it showed my time-tracking analytics for the Atlas period. I'm seeing a concerning pattern. Your focus time metrics are high, but your collaborative synergy tags are low. You seem to be working in a silo. True excellence at Sterling is a team sport. She was criticizing me for not having enough meetings while I was literally saving the company from a 7-figure disaster. I stared at her, my mouth agape. This shows a lack of leadership potential, she said, clicking her tongue. For the next promotion cycle, I need to see more holistic engagement, more visibility. Perhaps you could organize the next volunteer day. I left her office, my hands trembling, not with anger, but with a deep, fundamental disillusionment. The system wasn't just broken, it was actively hostile to competence, to success, to basic human dignity. It rewarded compliance, not results, theater, not work. And I was the lead actor in a play that was making me sick. But the final curtain hadn't fallen yet. That would require 2 more acts of corporate absurdity so profound they would break the spell completely. The first involved a birthday cake, the second, a funeral.
The horrors began to escalate from systemic dread to personal, targeted absurdity. The Atlas aftermath, as I came to think of it, changed my standing. I was no longer a promising rookie, I was a competent threat. Linda saw my independent success not as an asset, but as a critique of her management. I was moved off high-visibility projects and onto a soul-crushing internal initiative codenamed Project Phoenix, a rebranding of the company's employee intranet that no one wanted or needed. My new de facto boss was a man named Gavin, the director of Synergy and Internal Brand. Gavin was a man composed entirely of corporate jargon and hair gel. He spoke in triple-barreled nonsense. We need to leverage this paradigm to ideate a best-in-class, scalable solution that delights the end user. He scheduled meetings to plan meetings. He created matrices to track the emotional resonance of proposed font choices. Horror story number 1, the birthday betrayal. It was Chloe's 30th birthday. In a moment of rebellion against the sterile, joyless environment, Anya and I decided to get her a proper cake. Not a sad grocery store sheet cake from the celebrations budget, but a beautiful custom tres leches cake from her favorite Mexican bakery. We collected $5 each from a dozen willing colleagues, a quiet act of solidarity. The cake was a masterpiece. We presented it to Chloe at 4 p.m. in the small break room. For 10 glorious minutes, there was genuine laughter. People used actual forks. They made eye contact without checking their phones. It felt, for a flickering moment, like a workplace with humans in it. Gavin walked in. His smile was a grimace. "What's this?" "Chloe's birthday," Anya said, defiantly cheerful. "We have a protocol for celebratory recognitions," Gavin said, his voice cooling the room by 10 degrees. "They must be scheduled through internal brand to ensure alignment with our cultural pillars of inclusive celebration. This," he gestured at the cake, "creates clique behavior. It excludes those who might have dietary restrictions or choose not to participate for personal reasons." Then he delivered the killing blow. "And the collection of funds on company property is a direct violation of policy HR 47.b, solicitation and distribution. It creates an uncomfortable power dynamic. I'm going to have to ask you to discard the cake and submit a reflection on this incident to HR." We stood in stunned silence. Chloe was near tears. Anya looked like she might throw the cake at him. I just felt a profound, weary disgust. We threw the $90 cake in the trash. The next day, we all received a company-wide email from Gavin titled Reaffirming Our Culture of Inclusive Recognition. It included a link to a form where you could request a Sterling celebration pack for team members, a digital coupon for 10% off the company cafeteria, and a pre-written generic e-card.
Horror story number 2. The grief policy. 2 weeks later, I received the call. My grandfather, the man who taught me to fish, to change a tire, to be quiet in the woods, had passed away. The grief was a physical weight. I called Linda, my voice cracking. "I'm so sorry for your loss, Marcus," she said, her tone professionally somber. "Now, you're aware of our bereavement policy." I need a few days. The funeral is in Ohio." "Of course. The policy allows for 3 days of paid bereavement leave for the death of an immediate grandparent. You'll need to fill out Form G44, attach a copy of the death certificate or obituary, and have it notarized. Then submit it to HR for pre-approval before your leave begins." I blinked. A notarized copy of the obituary? Pre-approval? "It's to prevent abuse of the policy," she said smoothly. "We've had issues in the past. And, Marcus, try to keep an eye on your emails. Project Phoenix is in a critical phase." I flew to Ohio, my laptop in my bag, a knot of fury in my chest alongside the grief. At the funeral home, as my family wept, I slipped away to a corner and used the printer in the director's office to print my grandfather's obituary. I drove to a UPS store, paid a stranger to notarize it, scanned it, and uploaded it to the Sterling portal from my phone. The approved notification came through as we were leaving for the cemetery. I took the 3 days. On the second day, while my family shared stories, my phone buzzed incessantly. Slack messages from Gavin. "Need your thoughts on the iconography for the My Wellness portal." Emails with "Urgent" in the subject line about color palettes. Linda, "Checking in. Hope you're recharging. The Q3 metrics deck needs your section by EOD tomorrow." I didn't respond. For the first time, I actively ignored them. The real world, the world of loss, of love, of family, had collided with the Sterling world, and the latter revealed itself as a grotesque cardboard mockery of importance. When I returned, red-eyed and soul-weary, I was summoned not for condolences, but for a priority sync. In the conference room, Gavin and Linda were waiting. "Marcus, welcome back," Linda began, not meeting my eyes. "We need to talk about Project Phoenix deadlines. Your unplugged time has created a bottleneck." Gavin nodded. "The synergy flow is disrupted. We're losing momentum." I stared at them. My grandfather's ashes were in an urn on my parents' mantle. These people were talking about synergy flow. "I was at a funeral," I said flatly. "And we respect that," Linda said, holding up a placating hand. "But the business doesn't stop. We all have to find a way to persevere. Now, about the user journey map." As they spoke, a switch flipped inside me. The fear, the anxiety, the desire to please, it evaporated. In its place was a cold, clear clarity. These people were not well. The system was a sickness, and I was donating my life, my grief, my precious time to its upkeep. The final horror, the one that would be my last, was brewing. It involved a wellness initiative so tone-deaf it would have been comical if it weren't so sinister, and it would target the one person in the office I still respected, Anya. She had been unusually quiet for a week, wincing at her screen, massaging her wrist. She finally confided in me at the coffee machine. "Carpal tunnel, or something like it. It's agony. I can barely hold a pencil." "Go to a doctor. Get a note. Get an ergonomic assessment." "I did," she whispered, her eyes fearful. "The doctor said I need a vertical mouse, a keyboard tray, and to stop repetitive strain for at least a week. HR said the ergonomic equipment request has a 6 to 8 week approval backlog, and they denied the modified duty. They said my role is essential design and cannot be paused." The next day, an all-company email arrived from the Chief People Officer.
The subject, our newest wellness partnership, Mind Body Solutions. The email announced that, in response to employee feedback about stress, Sterling had partnered with a luxury wellness app. For a mere $25 monthly subscription deducted from our paychecks pre-tax, we could access guided meditations, yoga videos, and resilience coaching. The kicker: to celebrate this partnership, we will be installing state-of-the-art wellness pods on each floor, soundproof capsules for power naps or meditation during your breaks. I looked from the email to Anya, who was wearing a wrist brace she'd paid for herself, silently suffering because the company wouldn't approve a $100 piece of equipment. They would install $10,000 nap pods before they'd give her a wrist rest. Anya caught my look. Her eyes were filled with tears of pain and fury. She mouthed a single silent word: "Run." I knew she was right, but I wasn't going to run. Not yet. After the birthday cake, after the funeral, after seeing Anya's pain ignored, something in me had hardened. I wouldn't just quit quietly. If this was a horror story, I would write my own ending, and it would be a scene they'd remember.
The climax began, as these things often do, with a calendar invite. The subject: Project Phoenix, Final Sprint Showcase and Synergy Celebration. It was scheduled for Friday at 4 p.m., a transparent ploy to trap everyone until at least 7. The description promised a showcase of our agile journey, followed by recognition and artisanal pizza. The showcase was to be held in the Innovation Gallery, a cold white room usually used to impress clients. Gavin had ordered inspirational decor, beanbag chairs that no one over 30 could exit gracefully, and walls plastered with sticky notes in a sickly rainbow of colors, each bearing meaningless buzzwords like disrupt and empower. For 2 weeks, Gavin and Linda micromanaged our team into the ground, preparing meaningless deliverables for this farce. We created user personas for employees who didn't exist. We designed journey maps for processes that would never be implemented. The entire project was a $500,000 fiction designed to make Gavin look innovative. The day of the showcase arrived. I had slept maybe 3 hours in 3 days. Anya's wrist was in a more robust brace. She'd paid out of pocket for a specialist. Ben's nervous cough had become a constant worrying hack. Chloe looked spectral, existing on caffeine and resentment. At 3:59 p.m., the department, 60 exhausted, dead-eyed people, filed into the Innovation Gallery. The senior leadership team was there, including the sleek, silver-haired CEO, Richard Sterling himself. He stood at the front, radiating smug benevolence. Gavin took the stage, beaming. "Team, family, what a journey! Today isn't just about a project, it's about the synergy that made it possible, the grit, the relentless pursuit." He launched into a PowerPoint presentation so devoid of substance it felt like a parody. Pie charts showing engagement velocity, word clouds generated from our meeting notes, a photo of the sticky note wall presented as evidence of groundbreaking ideation. I stood at the back, next to Anya. We didn't speak, we just watched the theater of it, the sheer, staggering volume of wasted time, talent, and human spirit represented in that room. Then came the recognition portion. Linda took the mic. "And now, to celebrate the incredible humans behind the work, we have some special awards. These aren't just awards, they're tokens of our cultural currency." One by one, she called people up for awards that were insults wrapped in corporate laminate. "Chloe Thompson, for your unwavering resilience, logging the most after-hours hours this quarter." Chloe walked up, her face a mask, and received a cheap plastic trophy of a figure climbing a mountain. She'd missed her best friend's wedding for those after-hours hours. Ben Shaw, for embodying agile spirit, pivoting the most times on the Henderson account. Ben received a stress ball shaped like the company logo. He'd pivoted because Linda changed her mind daily, giving him an ulcer. Then, Linda's eyes scanned the crowd and landed on me. A smile touched her lips. And finally, Marcus Thorne, Marcus has shown interesting initiative this quarter. For thinking outside the box, even when the box contains our core processes, we award you the Divergent Thinker Award. The room offered tepid, confused applause. Gavin brought me a trophy, a glass prism that was supposed to represent breaking paradigms. It was cold and poorly made. I stood there, holding the ugly prism, looking out at the sea of tired faces. I saw Anya massaging her wrist. I saw Chloe clutching her resilience trophy like a weapon. I saw Ben looking at the floor. I saw the CEO checking his watch.
Something snapped. Not with anger, but with a profound, deafening clarity. The moment crystallized. The birthday cake in the trash, the notarized obituary, Anya's pained wrist, this cheap trophy for my divergent thinking that had been systematically punished for months. I didn't throw the trophy. I didn't shout. I walked calmly to the small podium where Linda stood, the microphone still live. "Marcus?" she said, her smile faltering. I gently took the mic from her hand. I could feel the entire room freeze. 60 people holding their breath. Gavin's smile was rigid, the CEO's eyebrows raised. I looked at the prism in my other hand, then at the audience, my colleagues, my fellow prisoners. "You know," I said, my voice calm and clear in the silent room, "Linda called me a divergent thinker. She's right. I've been thinking very divergently lately." I paused, letting the tension coil. "I've been thinking about how we threw away a birthday cake because sharing joy isn't inclusive by policy." A ripple went through the crowd. Chloe sat up straight. "I've been thinking about how we need a notary to prove our grief is real enough for 3 days of peace." Ben stopped coughing, his eyes wide. "I've been thinking about how we'll install nap pods before we'll give a person in pain a $30 ergonomic mouse." Anya met my gaze, her eyes shining. "And I've been thinking," I continued, my voice gaining strength, "about what this prism really represents. It represents how they take our light, our passion, our health, our time, our grief, and they fracture it. They bend it into something that serves only them. They take our whole human selves and distill us down to metrics on a dashboard. Hours logged, synergy tags, utilization rates." I looked directly at Richard Sterling. "You have a motto in the lobby: excellence through relentless pursuit. You've relentlessly pursued our dignity, our boundaries, and our sanity. And you've caught them. Congratulations." I set the prism down on the podium with a sharp click. "So I'll give you some truly divergent thinking. This isn't excellence. This is exploitation with a branding budget. This project is fiction. These awards are insults. And this family is toxic." I took my employee badge from my lanyard and placed it on top of the prism. I quit. Not just this job, but this whole charade. And I invite anyone else who's tired of trading their life for a pizza party and a plastic trophy to consider doing the same. The silence was absolute. You could hear the HVAC system whir. Then, from the back of the room came a sound. Clack. Anya had stood up. She walked to the front, her head high. Without a word, she pulled her badge off and dropped it on the podium next to mine. Clack. Then Chloe. Clack. Then Ben. Clack. One by one, then in small groups, people stood. Not everyone, maybe a third of the room, but they came. They added their badges to the growing pile on the podium, a silent, powerful avalanche of resignation. Linda was pale. Gavin looked like he might faint. Richard Sterling's face was a stone. I didn't look at them again. I looked at Anya, Chloe, Ben, and the others who had stood. We didn't cheer. We didn't say a word. We just turned and walked out of the innovation gallery, out of the maze of cubicles, past the marble motto in the lobby, and into the cool evening air of the real world. The revelation wasn't that I quit. It was that by speaking the truth out loud, I gave others permission to see it too. And in that moment, we weren't employees. We were people again. And we were free.
The immediate aftermath was a surreal blend of liberation and vertigo. We didn't go to a bar to celebrate. We just stood on the sidewalk outside the gleaming tower, blinking in the twilight as if we'd emerged from a cave. The 15 of us who had walked out exchanged shell-shocked smiles, phone numbers, and promises to meet up properly once the adrenaline wore off. Then we scattered, each of us carrying the sudden, weightless reality. We had no jobs. My phone began to vibrate incessantly before I even reached the train. Missed calls from Linda, from Gavin, from a number labeled HR Emergency. Texts, "Marcus, we need to talk. This is highly unprofessional. Return to the office immediately to discuss your exit." I turned my phone off. The silence was exquisite. For the first time in years, my time was my own. No screenshots, no synergy tags, no 7:15 a.m. mandatory meditation. I went home, poured a drink I didn't finish, and slept for 14 hours. A deep, dreamless sleep of the profoundly exhausted. The next morning, I turned my phone on to a digital war zone. Dozens more calls and texts. The most interesting was an email from Richard Sterling's executive assistant, requesting, not demanding, a conversation at my earliest convenience. The tone had shifted from command to negotiation. But the real fallout was in the court of public opinion and internal morale. Anya, bless her anarchic heart, had recorded my entire speech on her phone. She didn't post it publicly. None of us wanted that kind of viral infamy. But she did share it in a private Slack channel that included people from other departments. The video spread through Sterling Dynamics like a truth virus. By Monday morning, the story was the only thing anyone was talking about. The official company line in an all-hands email was that a small number of employees chose to depart during a team event, and we respect their personal decisions. Sterling's culture of excellence remains unwavering. It was a laughable lie, and everyone knew it. Productivity for the following week reportedly dropped by 40%. The Glassdoor page was flooded with new, scathingly detailed one-star reviews mentioning the podium incident and Divergent Thinker awards. Recruitment candidates began withdrawing their applications. My personal consequences were a mix of fear and freedom. The fear was practical. I had rent, student loans, living expenses. The freedom was psychological. I had my mind and my time back. I updated my LinkedIn that Monday, simply stating I had concluded my tenure at Sterling Dynamics. Within hours, I had messages from recruiters at competing firms and from former colleagues at other companies who'd heard the legend. The story, in a twisted way, had become a badge of honor. Proof I had a spine.
A week after the walkout, I met Anya, Chloe, and Ben for coffee. They were different people. The tension had drained from their faces. Anya's whist was already improving with rest. Chloe was applying to non-profit jobs. Ben was seeing a therapist for his anxiety. We laughed, really laughed, for the first time in years. "So what's the deal with Sterling?" I asked. "Any word from the inside?" Chloe grinned. "My friend in HR says Project Phoenix is on indefinite pause. Gavin has been transitioned to a special projects role, which is code for being sent to corporate Siberia. Linda is still there, but her reputation is shredded. Rumor is the board is furious with Richard, all because you wouldn't take your stupid Prism trophy quietly." The financial fallout for the company became clearer over the next month. The Atlas client, whom I'd saved, caught wind of the exodus and the toxic culture. They pulled their account, citing concerns about partner stability. 2 other major clients followed. The stock price dipped. They had to cancel the Wellness Pod installation due to budget reallocation. As for me, I decided against jumping into another corporate job immediately. I had a modest savings cushion. I took contract work to pay the bills while I figured out what I actually wanted to do. The experience had hollowed me out, but it also created a clean, empty space to rebuild something authentic. The most profound consequence was the lawsuit. Not from me, I just wanted to be done, but from Anya.
With the help of a contingency fee lawyer, she sued Sterling Dynamics for failing to provide reasonable accommodation for her repetitive strain injury, creating a hostile work environment and retaliatory conditions. She used the recording, the emails about the ergonomic request backlog, and the testimonies of several of us who walked out as evidence. The case settled quickly and quietly out of court for a sum that allowed Anya to take a full year off to heal and retrain in UX design, a field where she wouldn't have to click a mouse 10,000 times a day. The final personal piece of fallout arrived in a formal, thick envelope. It was my exit paperwork and final paycheck. The check included every hour of accrued, unused PTO they'd previously made impossible to use. There was no mention of a non-disclosure agreement or a non-disparagement clause, a tacit admission that trying to silence us would only make things worse. Attached was a bland letter wishing me well in my future endeavors. It was unsigned. I deposited the check. It felt less like severance and more like reparations. Blood money for the years of sleep, health, and peace they'd taken. I allowed myself one petty, satisfying act. I took the Divergent Thinker Prism Trophy, drove back to the Sterling Dynamics building one evening, and left it on the reception desk in the lobby. I placed it right under the etched motto, "Excellence through relentless pursuit." I didn't leave a note. The message was clear enough. Walking out the last time, I felt no rage, no triumph, just a quiet, solid closure. The horror story was over. I had survived it, and more than that, I had written my own ending.
It's been 18 months since I placed my badge on that podium. The person who did that feels like a character from a book I read, someone braver than I believed I could be. I didn't return to the corporate grind. The contract work I took on revealed a simple truth. I was good at organizing things and solving problems, but I needed to do it on my own terms. With the savings from my sterling paychecks and a small loan from my parents, who were equal parts horrified by my story and proud of my exit, I started a small consultancy. I help small businesses and nonprofits implement sane, human-centric project management systems. My tagline is productivity without poison. My first clients were Anya, who needed help organizing her new freelance design business, and Chloe, who now runs community outreach for an urban gardening collective and needed to streamline donor management. We meet for dinner every few months, the podium crew, as we jokingly call ourselves. We don't talk much about Sterling anymore. It's become a shared origin story, a dark forest we all walked out of. Anya's wrist is fully healed. Ben's cough vanished within a month of leaving. Chloe radiates a calm joy she never had in that office. We're all making less money, objectively, but we are immeasurably richer in time, health, and autonomy. I heard through the industry grapevine that Sterling Dynamics never recovered its reputation. They rebranded 6 months ago, changing their name to Apex Collaborative Solutions. They issued a new, vague value statement about trust and well-being. Gavin was let go in the rebrand. Linda took early retirement. Richard Sterling remains CEO, but the word is he's lost the confidence of the board. The company is a cautionary tale, a ghost ship navigating the waters of modern business, captained by a man who still believes the problem was a PR incident, not a profound moral failure. As for me, the resolution wasn't about vengeance or victory. It was about integration. I had to integrate the experience of being psychologically dismantled by a system and then choosing to walk away. I had to forgive myself for staying as long as I did, for internalizing the toxicity, for believing the pizza parties were a reward and not a pacifier. I learned that workplace horror is rarely about a single monster. It's about 1,000 paper cuts of disrespect. The stolen birthday cake, the notarized grief, the ignored pain, the plastic trophy for your humanity.
It's about a system that values the appearance of loyalty over actual results, that mistakes suffering for dedication. Most importantly, I learned that quitting isn't failure. In a broken system, leaving is often the only rational, healthy, and courageous choice. Staying in a toxic environment is a slow-motion suicide of the spirit. Walking out is an act of radical self-preservation. My consultancy is small but growing. I have a waiting list. It turns out there are a lot of organizations run by decent people who are terrified of becoming Sterling Dynamics. They hire me to help them build guardrails against that very toxicity. I teach them that tracking hours is less important than tracking outcomes, that an ergonomic chair is a better investment than a nap pod, that a handwritten note of thanks is more powerful than a culture currency trophy. Sometimes a client will ask about my past. Why did you leave such a prestigious firm? I give them the abbreviated version. Their eyes usually widen. Then they nod, slowly. They get it. The horror is recognizable, even in its specifics. I keep the Glassdoor page for Sterling Dynamics, now Apex Collaborative Solutions, bookmarked, not out of spite, but as a reminder. Every few weeks, a new review pops up. The language is different, but the themes are hauntingly familiar. Burnout, hypocrisy, soul-crushing. The system, it seems, survived its exorcism. The building is still there. The lights are still on. New graduates, lured by the brand and the salary, are still walking through those doors ready to be forged in the same broken furnace. I don't feel sorry for them. I feel a responsibility. That's why I speak about it. That's why I wrote this. To say, you are not crazy. The water is getting hotter. That pit in your stomach on Sunday night is data. That feeling that your work is a meaningless performance is your intuition screaming. Listen to it. My workplace horror story made me quit my job, and in doing so, it gave me back my life. It gave me my time, my health, my friendships, and my sense of purpose. The cost was high, but the reward was something no corporate bonus could ever match. The unshakable knowledge that I am a person, not a resource. That my worth is not my utilization rate. And that sometimes the most productive thing you can do is stand up, hand back the prism, and walk out into the light. Which side of that story were you on? Let me know in the comments. And if you love diving into these Reddit rabbit holes with me, subscribe to Reddit Be Mine. We're building the best storytelling community on YouTube, and we'd love to have you. Click that sub button and stay tuned.